This is the voice of freedom. We are not one voice. We are many. We are your voice. But we can only be effective if you use your voice.
Well, that went well, didn't it? There you go, the foibles of changing brands mid-opener. Hello, folks. Welcome to the show. Well, that's not quite the way I'd planned on kicking off, and I am a couple of minutes late. I do apologise. I was having a look in the chat, and there was a dickhead called JJ. Apologies for that. I've lost him. He has departed and will no longer be playing any further role in tonight's proceedings. Thanks for giving up your Saturday night, folks. Thanks for giving up last night. Unfortunately, as you know, the Aussie Cossack got wrapped up last night with other matters of much more urgency and, legal import than us. But he did promise he would be back. And, true to his word, he has materialised back again. So can I just say thank you very much for coming back, Cossack. Oh, yes. Have a drink, because I know once you start talking, it's very difficult to slow you down.
That was a celebrationary vodka to mark the.
Tell us about what you're celebrating.
Well, it's a great day, not only for Russia, but for Ukraine, for the whole world. There's finally some peace on the horizon. There is a genuine opportunity now for hostilities to cease and for the conflict to now subside in a capacity. Russia has formally absorbed or accepted, you could say, these former Russian territories: Kherson region, Zaporozhye region, Donetsk People's Republic, Lugansk People's Republic. And by doing so, Russia will now defend these regions as part of its own, And I mean, look, for the people out there that are listening and not sure what I'm talking about, it's not surprising that many people aren't aware of what's going on, because the mainstream media, Channel 9, Channel 7, ABC, if you ask them, they'll tell you Russia's losing the war.
It's a joke.
Well, let's just ask this rhetorical question. The mainstream media maintains that Russia's losing the war, except Russia just captured or absorbed or reunited, or you could say reclaimed, a territory that's equal to the size of Greece, or more than the size of all of Portugal, or more than the size of Bulgaria. So we're talking about a huge piece of land in Europe, and most importantly, it's a very important strategic piece of land. It means that the Azov Sea is completely now under Russian control. The whole Black Sea, you could say, the whole Black Sea access points are all Russian, except for the port city of Odessa. That's still under Ukrainian control. And these territories were always part of Russia. They were always part of Russia.
Always. Yeah.
I can see a comment there from Samantha Hughes. She's saying that they're using propaganda to say that Russia illegally claimed territories. And Samantha is exactly right, on the right track there, Samantha. The Western media, they refuse to report the truth. And in tonight's discussion, I'm happy to answer any sort of questions that are thrown, the curveball questions. And Carl, please go ahead and pick my brain, and I'll act as a Russian apologist, if you want to put it that way. I'm happy to do so, because it's not about defending Russia. It's just about getting the truth out about what's going on in there, and people who are educated, people who are informed in Australia, make their own decision. And yes, everyone accepts, and I accept, that Putin's not perfect. No, I'm not perfect. Any leader who says he's perfect is mucking around. He's not genuine. Welcome to Dave Graham. He says Russia is our ally, not our enemy. Our enemy comes from within. Wake up, folks. Listen to Cossack. It's the truth. Guru loves truth. Thank you very much, Guru. There's a nice little message for him.
Mate, he's a big follower of yours, big supporter, as you well know.
Well, he's not a follower. He's not a supporter. He's a brother.
Yeah, so true. So I've got a range of questions that people have sent in to me to ask you. Some are very interested to learn about your time inside and how you dealt with the isolation, particularly, and how you were, given a terrorist status, or almost terrorist status. It must have been hard on you mentally. people have obviously asked about the postcards that we set up and sent through. Obviously, you got the postcards. Do you, just as a lead in on the postcards, I don't know how many you got, but I suspect, a lot. And do you actually get the postcards in the end, or do they, just...
So let me start with that question. A very good question. Firstly, thank you for the postcard campaign, and thank you for everything, Carl. Your efforts and all the good people out there. All of the postcards that were sent in were excellent. They basically have many good strategic uses. People think that's just a little letter or a postcard there, but let me tell you how important they were. Firstly, demoralize the guards and the prison system completely, because imagine they've got to sort through 5,000 to 10,000 postcards that are coming in and letters and so forth, and they have to read every single thing. And because I'm a national security interest inmate, they don't give me the postcard. They actually photocopy it and they check it, and they rejected probably, I don't know, maybe 30 to 40% of the postcards. So they were looking for technicalities. If there wasn't a return address, if there was something written in a foreign language, if there was any swearing, anything like that. They're very strict conditions, much more stricter than the usual jail conditions because of my extreme high-risk inmate and national security interest inmate status. Nevertheless, I was receiving many postcards, and there was one point where it just was demoralizing the guards, because all of the things that people were writing were being written by regular average Australians from South Australia, Queensland, New South Wales. A lot of postcards from regional areas, as far away as even Great Britain, the United States, Canada, New Zealand, all over the place. And of course, imagine the prison guards have to read all of this. Intel has to read all this. They catalog it, they log it, then they hand it to me, right? And then we're sitting in the jail yard with all the boys going through all this mail, and there's honestly it's stacking up. It started like this, and I got to this, and I got to this, and there's. If you see that video on my YouTube page on Aussie Cossack YouTube, you can see the video where I'm walking out of prison. I'm carrying two big bags, like massive, these big garbage bags. So they're full of paperwork, letters, and mail. So what we'll do is, it's massive. What we'll do is everything's been hectic. I mean, I've only been out of jail for, 13 or 14 days. And what we'll do is we'll sit down, we'll do a live, and we'll go through every single letter. Because of my national security interest status, it was very hard for me to write back to people. In fact, I was told by the prison intel, if I was to write back, it probably only reached the people, a year later, because it has to go to this department, that strike force, this task force. It wasn't viable to write back, even though some of you did send me postage paid envelopes to write back to you. I just handed out to the other boys, who needed them. But thank you for that. And a big special mention to a lady called Colleen from Sydney's Northern Beaches. She actually sent me a crossword book, which kept me very interested and very busy doing crosswords in maximum security. It means a lot.
Yeah, very good. Very good. Excellent. Okay, so you got out. It must have been, the postcards were great. There must have been other trying times. What was the worst time for you while you were inside?
You can put it this way, that it was the worst time was when they didn't allow me to obviously speak to my wife. As we know, I wasn't allowed to have any visits from her. And the only person I had on my phone numbers list was just one person, my wife. It's when you're a national security interest inmate, it's very hard to get permission from the corrective system. It needs to be signed off by the Commissioner of Correctives himself, and they have to present police checks and attend in person, and it's just a big mess. And you can only apply to have visitors or people on the phone once. Then they have to wait 3 months. So it's all very set up to try and minimize, whatever rights that a regular prisoner has, and that's not many rights. Obviously, prisoners don't have many rights. The national security interest designation is just a way for them to strip whatever you have left away from you. As with most of the anti-terrorism legislation after September 11th, as we know, it wasn't used, every day or every second day, every week against terrorists, was it? Or alleged terrorists or potential terrorists. Who was it used against? It was used against journalists. It was used against demonstrators, peaceful protesters, political activists. Yeah. And we see the government using terrorist legislation, terrorist powers, national security powers,
anti-terrorist tactics.
anti-terrorist tactics, and they use their tactics, intimidation tactics, task forces, strike forces. I mean, after September 11, obviously the government gave billions of dollars in funding. It was all very confronting. Seeing the supposed whatever went down that day probably didn't even happen. There's a high chance that there was something behind that, something more sinister than what it was. But we won't go into that. In respect to the memory of those who lost their lives. But what I want to say is that it is out of control. It is outrageous. There aren't many terrorists at all in Australia. Well, what have we had? We've got that Man Monis guy, the lunatic. Incidentally, he was actually an associate of a UAP candidate called Jamal Dawood, but that guy's a separate story. There's a photo of them together, which the media hasn't picked up on. But we don't really have many terrorists in this country. So this legislation is used against people who dare to speak up against the government.
Yeah, absolutely. It's used to silence people, scare people into being quiet or changing their story, recanting their story in some cases. So it's certainly overreached by government, and I don't think there's any doubt that they're a bunch of evil bastards. Which brings me, I suppose, to my next point. Craig Kelly, not in Parliament anymore, but did live with the evil bastards for a fair while. Now, he turned up, I think, while you were in Long Bay. I saw him at the side of the stage at the rally that you turned up at, I think the day after you were released. So a lot of people are wondering, are you going to be running for something in the state for UAP? Because Craig is still associated, I think, with UAP, is he?
As far as I know, as far as I heard, unconfirmed, I don't think they're registered. The UAP is registered in the New South Wales election. But at this stage, I'm not planning to run anywhere at the moment. It's as you can imagine, as we saw with the federal elections. If you have enough, you could say, enthusiasm and energy, you put your mind to it. We can actually, as not even running in elections, we can, in a way, we can contest them, where we can push our people through, and we can do everything possible to block those candidates who we think shouldn't go through. I'll give you an example. Fiona Martin from Reed, and obviously those who have watched the Aussie Cossack channel all through last year, all through the beginning of this year up until the election, Fiona Martin certainly lost the election. I would say in some part thanks to those counter and campaigning measures which we deployed against her, which of course they were all lawful and everything. I was charged once with all of those Fiona Martin things, and that charge is before the courts. I'm contesting it. If you remember that day where Fiona Martin had her campaign launch in the Drummoyne Sailing Club, and Josh Frydenberg, the treasurer, pulled up. So because Josh Frydenberg was there, there's all these federal police and special sort of Canberra bodyguards everywhere, and the cops were ready. They knew I was coming. The thing is, I had an invitation, right? I had an invitation to this event because Fiona Martin obviously outsources all of her campaign work. She's lazy, doesn't want to do it herself. So it was sort of all automated. And I got an email, right? It says Fiona Martin writes me an email, and all of a sudden she's saying, "Don't forget to come on time. See you tomorrow." I'm thinking, how good is this? Fiona Martin invited me to her event. So I printed off the email. I printed it off. I printed off 2 copies even, put it in my blazer pocket, and I printed off the invitation. Got our Aussie Cossack camera crew, and we went down there, with a big mainstream media style camera on the shoulder, this big. I mean, we could have just used a mobile phone, but it's all about the psychological sort of
absolutely, yes.
Factor, when you rock up with a mobile, it's not serious. You rock up with a camera that looks like it's from Channel 10 or something. It's a different story.
Beta cam, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So we rock up and there's coppers on the door. And if you want to see the full video, have a look at it on Aussie Cossack. But they were already lying in wait, so to speak, a bit of an ambush. And they said to me, right, you have to sign in with the QR code. Give us your address. What's your vaccination status? And I said, wait a second, one question at a time. All of a sudden, within 30 seconds, the manager of the club says, we're asking you to leave the premises. I said, hang on a second, one question at a time. I'm happy to provide everything you like. And she goes, no, we're asking you to leave. 5 seconds later, there's 2 coppers just grab me and they go, you're under arrest for failing to leave a licensed premises under the Liquor Act. Okay, so I'm dragged out, handcuffed, while holding a reporter's mic, and my cameraman's filming all this, right? And Fiona Martin's inside. Now, they claim that I failed to leave a licensed premises. Well, in the Liquor Act, you must leave a licensed premises if you're intoxicated or drunk or disorderly, it says. So I was neither intoxicated or disorderly. I was arrested, taken to Build Police Station, thrown in the slammer for that. I was released, thanks to all the supporters who just rang up the police station doing welfare checks. I love when they do that. You know, they ring up. The cop station gets bombarded with thousands of phone calls. It's hilarious if you ask me, but they haven't charged me ever for that. They charged me for menacing police once, and I said, mate, I just asked for welfare checks. You know, if there's 1,000 or 5,000 people ringing your police station doing welfare checks, maybe don't arrest me. Because the commander of the police station, he was complaining. He goes, our switchboard is, it's light up like a Christmas tree, and no one can get through.
Was this the night that you, or the day that you got arrested and they kept you in and basically have kept you in until recently? Because I do recall I saw you at the door with the police that day, and that video has since been taken down. But there was a discussion there about, and they even gave out the phone number. They gave you the phone number if people wanted to do the welfare check on you. The police
that's the thing.
Gave you the phone number.
Now those police, they tricked me actually. They came to the jail into segregation, and there was the copper in the video. So he's in the video, and it looks really embarrassing for him. Whatever, being on TV, everyone's he's very unpopular with the people out there. And he came to my cell. He goes, "Look, we want you to delete this video." I said, "Why should I do anything for you?" And he goes to me, "Well, if you delete the video, we won't oppose bail." And I had a bail hearing the next day. Now, I applied for bail 4 times. I got knocked back 4 times.
Yeah.
And I go, all right, fine. And I said, I'll do it if you do me another favor. If while I'm using my phone, you let me transfer some money to my wife. Because my poor wife, she, I'd been locked up and I've got my phone, banking. She's got nothing, the poor girl, It's all sort of, wow. I need to give her all my, give her access, so to speak. Yeah. And he agreed to the deal, He probably, he really was desperate to delete this video, because this video basically showed me being arrested live, and knocked on the door and they arrested me. And obviously during that arrest, I said to everyone, if you want to do a welfare check, call Burwood Police Station on 9745. And I forgot the rest of the number. So the actual cop, himself, he reminded me, and he said, it's 9745 8499. I said, thank you very much, call that number. So when I was charged with this, the prosecution actually withdrew it. They charged me with menacing police on top of everything. But then I withdrew it because my Brendan lawyer said, well, how can you charge him if you're an accomplice to it? He said half the phone number and you said the rest of it. So if you're going to charge him, you might as well charge yourself. You're as guilty as he is. And Daniel wouldn't stand up in court. And all these charges that they throw at me like confetti, there's been so many withdrawals. And we'll do another great video about this, of how many charges are actually getting withdrawn. They whack them on. They have to go mention. Lawyers pay them. I've spent like hundreds of thousands on legal fees in the last few years. It's just ridiculous. And that's their war of attrition. They try and drain you. They've got the resources of the Crown. They've got the resources, of the taxpayer. So they don't care how many prosecutors they bring, how many adjournments they make. Anyway, back to your question. Back to the story. We got carried away. Sorry. That copper made me delete that video, but we have a copy of that video, so we'll probably just post it back up. Like, seriously, I mean, why not?
Well, as long as it's not going to get you back in jail for anything while you're still on parole.
Oh, mate, they've got a strike force. I know this for a fact, and they're just looking to catch the Aussie Cossack on something.
Oh, I don't doubt it.
Yeah.
Mrs Cossack was a powerhouse while you were inside. She relayed information to myself, to Guru, I know, to others. Absolute powerhouse. And we all just want to make sure that she's okay now. She must be much happier, A, that you're back with the money, and B, that you've setting up a channel. I saw something the other day on your channel. Mrs Cossack is getting her own channel. Well,
yeah, Mrs Cossack is actually asleep. She's very tired. She's been out of the battle day. And she's been exhausted. The last 4 months have been exhausting for her because, very sadly, in the same week I got arrested, my father-in-law passed away. So it was all up in the air for Mrs. Cossack. So she's lost her husband to jail. She's lost, dad to the to the funeral. It was very terrible. And she's got obviously family. They got 4 sisters and a mother.
Yeah.
So for 4 months I was in prison, and she was really doing it tough. She was doing a great job. It's a credit to her.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, you've got all these feminists out there who jump up and down about women and all this. Well, Mrs. Cossack is the example, of a strong woman. She's an example of a woman who shows grace in the face of tyranny, and that's this, this theme that Mrs. Cossack's fans and supporters have been talking about. That they see that in her, and of course, she's the daughter of an officer. So when she hears that song, we are one, we are many, we are Australian. Is that word? The daughter of a digger. What it was? How's it? A daughter of a digger. The girl became a woman on a long and dusty road. So she burst into tears. If you look on Mrs. Cossack's channel, there's actually a video of her bursting into tears listening to this song. This is just when I came out of jail. She turned it on. Very hard for her. And these police, they know exactly what they're up to. And they attack family. The media, mainstream media. They attack the family, they attack the wife, they attack the family, they attack business, they attack nationality, they're racist. These headlines they run: Russian agent, Putin's #1 man. Look, at the end of the day, they didn't break us, they didn't break her, they didn't break me. We're as defiant as ever, we're as strong as ever. And in a way, the attempt by the police to silence me by putting me in prison, it sort of backfired in a way, Carl. This is the type of thing.
It's a bit like it's a bit like them pulling you over and putting an FPO on you, so that every copper that saw your car pulled you over, and yet they couldn't figure out that every time they pulled you over, they were feeding you content, and you are clever enough, smart enough, funny enough to make it very entertaining. I still think one of the funniest things I saw all year was the Russian dolls toolboxes at Bunnings. I just think it's the best thing ever. I understand that probably triggered the police in some way, shape, or form. And obviously you were very active on the protest scene, which leads me to one of the questions that somebody sent me in. So after the last big protest in Canberra, you were helping a guy in a big truck, freedom truck, get up to the top of one of the roads near his house. He wound up being dragged out of the truck and arrested. I think they impounded the truck. There are still apparently ongoing cases with all of this. He's been charged with some very serious crimes that could put him in jail for 10 years. And the truck apparently is still impounded. Now, I know you've only been out of jail for a couple of weeks. Did you know anything about this before you went in? Have you heard anything about it since you've come out? Do you have any plans, or can we help in some way? Oh. No, you're not hearing anything. Oh.
Just keep. I've got a technical issue. Just keep going for a second.
Oh, roger that. Okay. Well, now we got to have a bit of a look at what I assume will be the Russian Parliament behind there. I've got some questions too. I want to ask about that because, folks, you will have seen, of course, a lot of things going on about the Nord Stream 1 and 2 pipelines, and apparently Russia are blowing up their own pipelines now. If that doesn't sound absolutely stupid, I don't know what else possibly could, but I do not for a second believe that Russia is blowing up its own pipelines. I have seen, he's gone, he'll be back. I have seen some evidence, another video today coming out of America that indicates two possibilities. A French submarine was seen leaving the area, and apparently somehow they can track a French submarine leaving the area. I don't know how that happens, unless it's got something to do with the Americans who were in the area a few days beforehand. Now, there's a school of thought that if the American Navy went over that thing and had bad intentions, they could have left something to detonate once they'd moved safely further away. Conversely, a French submarine or some other submarine may possibly have fired some sort of an explosive into the pipeline. And now, consequently, we have at least 2 large holes, I think possibly even more, in the Nord Stream 1 and 2 pipelines. That, of course, sends a whole heap of natural gas straight into the ocean and out into the atmosphere. Natural gas, methane, all sorts of stuff, all the stuff the greenies want you to be scared of. So who has, sabotaged the Russian pipeline? Well, I don't think it's Russia. I think that would be absolutely stupid to suggest that Russia are doing that. And Vladimir Putin.
I can give you one theory if you like, and of course, I can't say exactly what's happened. It's very hard to figure out. There's a lot of misinformation out there. There's a lot of conflicting reports. I mean, there's a war going on, so each side is trying to present its own side as the truth. But there's actually a video, and I've posted that on the channel, of President Biden, in February, admitting that he's premeditating to take out the Russian pipeline. And the question is, why would the Americans want to take out the gas pipeline? Because as soon as the Europeans start talking about, oh, let's make peace, let's not attack Russia, let's stop sending weapons. The Germans recently said, no, that's enough. We've got no more weapons to send. Enough's enough. Try to find a peaceful solution. So the Americans are bloodthirsty and they're mad. They want to fight for months and months and months. And unfortunately, there are some commentators in Australia, there are some media personalities, there are some politicians who also agree with this American rhetoric that it's a good idea to drag the war out, to fight for months and years, and to spend more money, spend more blood, send more weapons, more bombs and more missiles. And this is the very extreme NATO position. Now, why would the Americans benefit from destroying the gas pipeline? Because it basically means that the European Union, mainly the Germans, whose pipeline it was, the Germany to Russia, it'll give them an incentive, or basically force them to keep fighting. The Americans are saying, well, look, winter's coming. If you want gas, you can't get it from the pipeline. You're going to have to actually go and get it. You're going to have to go to Siberia, you have to go to Moscow or Novosibirsk or wherever it comes from, and you have to get the gas. So there's one MO that is present that the Americans probably planned it all out. And by the way, we have an admission from Biden himself. I mean, it's definitely not the Russians who would blow up their own pipeline. It's absolutely ridiculous. The Russians aren't involved or they're not interested in expanding the conflict. I mean, the front line that the Russians have is 1,500 kilometers long, right? This is this is like World War II stuff. This is massive. They've captured in battle, they've captured 109,000 square kilometers. 109,000 square kilometers, huge. You think they're going to worry about blowing up a pipeline for what? I mean, the Russians didn't have to blow up a pipeline. If they wanted to stop the flow of gas, they would just turn the gas off from Russia. Right. And that's the first. The second thing is Europe pays Russia about $1 billion a day, every single day, for gas. Unfortunately, the Europeans don't have gas. They don't have oil. They don't have coal. God gave Russia everything, apart from beautiful women and very smart men. He gave Russia gold, number one, oil, number one, coal, number one, gas, number one, timber, number one, fresh water, number one. So they've been looking at Russia for many years, looking at Russia and trying to figure out how to grab it. Napoleon tried and failed. Hitler tried and failed. So the NATO leadership who are pushing war and warmongering, I mean, they're benefiting. Look at the American dollar. It's doing well, and all the other currencies are going down because the American industry, it flourishes. The defense industry flourishes when there's a war. Every single bomb, every single missile, every single Humvee, night vision goggles, jacket, pair of underwear, toothbrush, pair of boots, whatever it is that the Ukrainians are using, and the whole world, the whole NATO world is sending weapons there. Now, it's interesting that there is one country that benefits out of all of this immensely, and it's China. Penny Wong, our foreign minister in Australia, is demilitarizing Australia by exporting, for free. She's sending Australian missiles, Australian Bushmasters, $400 million already has gone in money and Australian weapons to Ukraine. Australia gets absolutely nothing out of it. And today, the Ukrainian ambassador to Australia is again jumping up and down and saying that Australia needs to give more, and just trying to provoke, trying to bring Australia, pull Australia into a war. And I'm very proud that a lot of Australians are rallying and saying no to war with Russia. It's great to see that a lot of Australians out there, they see straight through the lies of Mrs Miles, the defence minister. They see straight through the lies of Penny Wong, through the ABC, Channel 9, Channel 7, Sunrise, because you can see that the propaganda is constant. It's vexatious. It's well planned. It's well financed, and they're trying to convince the Australian people it's a good idea to get involved in a war. I mean, there has been no foreign conflicts that we've been involved in as a country ever that have actually benefited our country, right? So if we have a look at all the other wars where Australia was committed to, the foreign conflicts, Vietnam, ask the veterans from there. We didn't get anything. Korea, nothing. Afghanistan, what? Afghanistan, they went in there and they reinstalled the Taliban and left $89 billion worth of weapons. But what was I saying before I went on this ramble? Who actually benefited? China. Whatever we had, whatever small weapons Australia had, minuscule small army of 49,500 troops. That's all we've got. Yeah. And out of 49,500, if you count the psychologists, the counsellors, the gender diversity officers, the insurance OH&S safety officers, the cooks, the cleaners, the guy who connects the Wi-Fi, the guy, if you count all of those, the supportive sort of roles out of your 49,500, I don't know, I'm not an expert, but you might have only maybe half left over. So we've got, 20,000, 30,000, Australian defence personnel who can actually stand their ground and defend this country. And that's the reason why Penny Wong and Richard Marles have basically taken the risk of we're scared of China, so we need to follow America. By following America, we need to go to war against Russia, which is absolutely absurd. That's very silly, isn't it, Carl?
Oh, unbelievably stupid, I would have thought. Have you seen the news today? Two big things, I suppose. Well, actually, before we get to that, just so we can go back to them, Russian and Chinese ships apparently cruising the Aleutian Islands just outside of American waters heading towards Alaska, or if they're the Aleutian Islands, they would be in Alaska, I would have thought. And the speech from Putin today, which came out, where he basically told the world that they're being lied to in so many different ways, and pointed out a few obvious truths. Obviously, that's getting a bit of social media play. It's not getting any play really in mainstream media outside of them calling him a lunatic and, a murderer and God knows whatever else. So they're not taking note of the words he's saying. So people, I would suggest, if you haven't seen that speech, it is translated. You can see it word for word, and they usually write it out underneath as well. So I'd highly recommend you go.
Carl, we live in very interesting times, and Putin has talked about precedents in his speech. He did a very important speech yesterday. Could have been one of the most important speeches of the year, maybe the last 10 years even. And Putin talked about precedent. And he said the Americans set a precedent when they bombed Hiroshima and Nagasaki in Japan with the atomic weapons in order to save American lives. That's why the Americans did it. They wanted to end the war quickly, and they calculated if they conducted a land invasion of the Japanese mainland, amphibious assault, they would lose X amount of troops, in excess of hundreds of thousands. And they thought, well, better we just, destroy Nagasaki, Hiroshima. They'll, a few 100,000 Japanese civilians will die, but the Japanese will back down. So what is Putin talking about when he says precedents? He is saying to the whole world that the Americans did it, well, the Russians might do it. And it's a very, very, very dangerous situation at the moment. I can't stress this enough. The Russians conducted their referendum, right? The people in those regions voted. It's indisputable. There's plenty of videos out there. There's plenty of reporters on the ground. And this is all hidden and censored in the mainstream media of the West. But the people in those regions that Russia has taken, the southern and the eastern regions, these are historical Russian lands. Those people that are there, they speak Russian. They are Russian. They've got Russian passports. I mean, Russia hasn't invaded the Western Ukraine. If Russia was to, station its troops on the Polish border, and take over some Ukrainian towns, where people speak only Ukrainian and they can't even speak Russian and they don't even have Russian names or anything. All right, fair enough. I would say it's a bad idea. It's not a good thing. And purely for the fact that by occupying those Western Ukrainian regions, Russia would be facing, partisan warfare for the next 100 years. It'll be like in Afghanistan when the Americans were there. There'd be IEDs going off on the side of the road and whatnot, So the southern regions, they're very happy to be in Russia. And as I mentioned earlier, Putin slapped the Western bankers in the face by saying the regions which Russia liberates and now absorbs, they've basically announced a wiping of all the debts, all the locals. So, just imagine a Ukrainian family, they've got their little apartment there and they've got little, investment property, then they're chock-a-block up to their necks in debt and the mortgages and everything. And Putin comes in, the Russians come in and they say, it's all yours. Here are the keys. Here's the deed, And that's why the bankers are very, very upset, because that's basically a slap in the face to the world order, which they have imposed. And the whole of Ukraine really has now become a slave to the banking system, which is why Putin is leaving a section of Ukraine. He's leaving the Zelensky government. He's leaving Ukraine intact as a country, because Ukraine in the last 15 years, 15 years, more than 15 years, because after 91 it was a disaster. They've just been racking up WEF, IMF, World Bank, NATO, European Union, and they've just been living, day to day, receiving these handouts, these billion-dollar bailout packages from the Americans and from the bankers.
Saving grants. Just want to get back to that Freedom Truck. People want to know about the truck and the guy whose name escapes me. I think it's Michael. I could be wrong. If anybody knows how to contact him, let me know. But I've received 2 or 3 emails about that. So I don't know what happened that day after your video stopped.
Well, what happened that day? We straight away got in contact with his family, with him, and I think through the Aussie Cossack channel, we managed to raise, it was around $5,000 for him to help him, and that's it was from the channel, from all of us, and there was directly deposited to his brother, who's sort of on the ball, and he's running his whole sort of campaign for him. I think his brother's name is Steve, if I'm not mistaken. But this obviously all happened before I went to jail. Yeah, right. And it's very dubious charges that they've charged him with. And I think he should be able to get off. They've got a legal team, and I offered my lawyers, I offered support in that way. Right. But they seem to have things under control, and we paid his legal fees for those court occasions that he had through the channel. So we definitely didn't abandon him. And no. If he requires more help, if he requires, even though I've just come out of jail, I'm happy to jump in the ring again and see what we can do to help him out.
I'll step up too. I'd be happy to help. So I just don't know how to contact him and find out.
I'll find his brother's number somewhere. Well, before I got locked up, I do have it somewhere. But it's a travesty that he's even arrested in the first place, and the way they handled him, the way they smashed his window with their batons and pepper sprayed the cabin of the truck. I mean, if that happened in Canada, there would have been, all hell would have broken loose. But they did do that, and that was very unfortunate. So look, just for the record, and he's a very good guy. His brother's a very good guy. They're very humble people. They were involved in volunteer work, and they joined the convoys coming down with their trucks, the Freedom Convoy. So it's important not to abandon them. And I've done everything I can before I was locked up. So more than happy. It's a great cause to get behind, and maybe we'll get him on the show. You can get him on the show to do an interview, and we'll see what we can do to help again.
Absolutely. Other questions that I've got here are: do you think you're going to get another interview with Bosie, given that you stood on stage with Mac when you came out of jail and called him your mate? And thank you.
It's a silly question to say. Do you think you're going to get another interview with Bosie? I mean, Ricardo is a very solid guy. He's a military guy, so he's got a military way of dealing with things, and in that regard, we get on very well. I mean, I spoke to him. He texted me. We've been texting when I came out of jail, and I thanked him for his support while I was inside. He was there at the courthouse with my wife, very first day. Out of all the people out there, Ricardo was straight away there in support of the situation which was unfolding. Whatever is happening with between Mac and so forth. I mean, it's just like with all these divisions in the freedom movement. It's very difficult. It's very difficult to find the right ground. If we go back to that rally that happened in the city, I was very looking forward to seeing Ricardo speak, and I know many people were there. And Ricardo Bosi is always a very welcome guest on my channel, and a lot of his supporters, the A1 supporters, were very, very vocal in their support to me after I was locked up for naming the person who was the subject of a suppression order. So definitely, I mean, we'll invite him on the program, and look, I think there'll be a rally organised soon again in Sydney. And I suppose I could break this news. I mean, Mac texted me today, and he said, "Look, listen." He goes, "The next rally, the massive rally that they have in the city," he goes, "I think not only should Bosi speak, but A1 and Bosi and all of them, they should get involved and organise it. Because if you look at the crowd at these rallies, the A1 supporters, the Bosi sort of legions, they're very vocal and they're very strong. So it's only right for them to take an active role, and it's good. It's good to get behind people like Ricardo, because we do have elections coming up, and if we're going to change something, we need to get rid of these politicians. And the only way we can do that is put our own in there."
Well, I've got to say, I'm a bit surprised that Mac has offered up the stage to Rick, given that Rick.
No, I've got to take this. Look, there's some misunderstanding. I mean, I haven't had any run-ins with him myself, and we've always managed.
No, I think it's all got to do with Freemasonry. There is a belief that Mac's a Freemason, and Ricardo clearly has no love of Freemasons.
And look, neither do I.
Neither do I. Freedom movement.
Neither do I. Although I have had a few dinner parties in a Masonic center, but that's the Russian the restaurant on Bondi Road. So it's an ex-Masonic center. It's just a hall. It's called Russian Nights. If you know it, it was actually it's been overtaken now by some Georgians and Ukrainians. So no one goes there anymore.
You can't.
There was a few punch-ons there a couple of times. There was one bloke rocked up with wearing a Putin T-shirt, and the Georgians ran out screaming, and the Ukrainians, and a lot of that's a story for another time. But that restaurant on Bondi Road in the old Masonic Club.
Is that where you roll up on the side of the road with the piano accordion and start the Cossack music?
No, that sounds like my wedding video.
Well, that too is another story.
That's another story. Plenty of stories. Look, now that I'm out of jail, we can share a lot of stories.
Well, while you were in jail, I'm told that you were writing a lot of stories, and at some point these stories may be put into what we might loosely term a book, be that the old style one that you can buy in a shop or the new style one that you can buy online. Have you finished the book? How much of the book have you written? Is there even a book to be written? Where are we at with the book?
I was writing every day. The great thing about being in segregation and the great thing about being a political prisoner is that you have a lot of enthusiasm to write a book. And, as my mother-in-law told me, she goes, she's Russian. She goes, "You must write book. Everyone wrote book in jail. Hitler, Stalin." I'm like, don't compare me to them.
Please don't. No.
Of course not. Yes, we are, but look, it's true. This book that I did write, and I've got it was a handwritten copy, so that's in the process of publishing, and we'll have an announcement of sort of pre-release of the book. But the name of the book will be Suppressed, and it'll have a lot of information in there, which will be very uncomfortable for the authorities and the law enforcement structures of this country. Because all of the experiences and all of the ridiculous national security interests and being dragged around in orange overalls and having my legs chained and arms chained, it was ridiculous. It was complete overkill. Being treated like a terrorist from Guantanamo Bay just for naming a person who is the subject of a suppression order.
Yeah.
And that just goes to show, if they consider that a threat to national security, right? Well, who's in charge of the country? Why are those who are in charge of national security so worried about the breaching of suppression orders? That gives a very, very, it casts a very dark shadow on those who are in charge of this country. And what are they protecting, and what kind of values do they stand for? And I think we'll find as time goes on that a lot of the things that Ricardo Bozzi fights for are very, on topic and true and on the spot. The more time goes, we find that people like Vladimir Putin, the West said he's a bad guy. But if you look at really what's going on, he is a person as a leader who stands up. He's basically the last bastion of anything respectable and honourable and conservative and traditional. If you look at which direction the world is going, as a world generally, and Putin said it in his speech, he actually called out this satanic cult, of the globalists. This is very serious. He's going head on against them, and he said he's trying to protect children. We can see what's happening in Western countries, what they're doing to kids, and how they're trying to, taint them with this, new ideology. It's very unfortunate. It's very sad. And Russia is, look, Russia's not perfect. Putin's not perfect, But imagine being up against the whole world, basically the whole world. Oh, apart from the other 162 countries. Now, really, who's he up against is NATO, and Australia, unfortunately, is for some reason the only non-NATO partner who supplies so much money and weapons. I mean, this is the thing. Australia is not part of NATO. Australia is not obligated in any alliance to go and fight Russia. And Penny Wong, and I saw someone in the comments just there asked the question, is Penny Wong a foreign asset? Well, that's a very good question. Who is Penny Wong working for? John Belcher writes, Penny Wong giving billions away while our veterans and public living on the streets. I saw a homeless woman today in the city, a lady, getting harassed by police. And I stepped in to help and offered to be a witness. And the police threatened to charge me. This is the kind of, and you can have a look at the video on my channel. It's the latest FTP channel. But this is where the country's resources are misappropriated. Now, Australia has had a long tradition of sending money overseas, and basically, it's like in a schoolyard when you pay off the bully, when you give him your lunch, right? It's actually not a viable strategy. So we send money to the Pacific, we send money to Indonesia, Papua New Guinea, we send aid all over the place, Aus aid, whatever they call it, right? But what's happening with Ukraine? We're not sending bandages, we're not sending, Vegemite. We're sending missiles, guys. We're sending Australian missiles. We're sending Bushmasters. We're sending whatever, small arms, weapons we have, and Penny Wong, congratulations. Penny Wong has demilitarized Australia. I mean, the Chinese will probably give her a medal at the end of all of this. They'll probably invite her to the embassy, give her, diplomatic immunity and political asylum, and then she can live in a mansion in Beijing, next to Mao Zedong's grave or something.
I've heard that won't be possible because the CCP are apparently now on their knees. Xi Jinping has removed the 5 people that were giving him the most resistance. There is a story that the Xi Jinping in Beijing isn't the real Xi Jinping, and that the real Xi Jinping is actually sitting with his mate Vladimir Putin somewhere in Russia, drinking fine vodka and watching what else is going on in the world, and that China and Russia are working very hard to, under Xi Jinping, white hat, let's say, working very hard to rid the world of the child killers, as Vladimir Putin was saying. Now these stories, and there is video of them, Chinese and Russian ships traveling through the Aleutians. What thoughts have you on that?
Well, look, at the end of the day, China is a close Russian ally. And it's not just because of this conflict. That's been the case for a long time. And that's thanks to the West, thanks to the mainstream media. It's thanks to NATO, it's thanks to the CIA, it's thanks to AUKUS and Five Eyes and all of them, right? They created a system in the world, a geopolitical system where, Russia was thrust into the open arms of China and China was thrust into the open arms of Russia. And Russia is a formidable enemy, China's a formidable enemy. But when they're together, that's a very serious enemy, to have against you. Throw India into the mix, there's another 1 billion people and a very strong military. That's half the world. That's half the world, right? So it's interesting how, they've been conducting these geopolitics where China and Russia, by default or even involuntarily end up on the same side, standing shoulder to shoulder. And now Penny Wong, Australian Foreign Minister, is running to the Chinese. Listen to this: running to the Chinese, running to her Chinese counterpart, the Chinese Foreign Minister, and begging the Chinese to somehow stop the Russians. You know, well, if Penny Wong had any brains, she wouldn't have got Australia involved in the first place. You get that, Penny? Something Wong? If you didn't send missiles, if you didn't get involved in the Russian war, you wouldn't have to then embarrass yourself as our foreign minister to run to the Chinese and beg them to stop the Russians. I mean, we're supposed to, as a country, Australia, we're supposed to look tough and say, right, here we are. What we need is armed neutrality. I mean, there's a reason that Australian Prime Minister William Hughes did what he did when he changed this country's identity and he made it into a very independent, sovereign Australia, where Australia was, after the First World War, thanks to Billy Hughes, it had a seat at the Treaty of Versailles. It was no longer under Britain. You know, no longer part of the British colonial system. Even though Federation occurred in 1901, it was still all there. And Australia really broke through the chains of, you know, colonialism under Prime Minister Billy Hughes' rule. And Billy Hughes, in one of his very controversial decisions, which I'm very interested in, I hope one day to actually finish his mission, was to actually return to Russia all of the captured Crimean cannons, which are all over Australia. So you've got these cannons in Centennial Park in Sydney, in Melbourne, in Adelaide, in all up in Tasmania. So the British used to ask the colonies to give money. And Australia, being a young country, we needed the money itself. You know, we needed money for roads and bridges. But we were sending it off to Britain because the British were convincing the Aussies in the 1850s that Russia is about to attack. Of course, Russia never wanted to attack Australia. Now, guys, it's the same thing in 2022. You've got the British, you've got the Americans, you've got NATO, Five Eyes, AUKUS, convincing Australia and convincing Australians, saying that there's a Russian threat, that we need to send missiles, we need to provide money. You know, for the sake of Billy Hughes, you know, Penny Wong, grow up. Albanese, grow up. We got over this, you know, 104 years ago, you know, in 1918. But no, they're still continuing on. And they're still continuing on. So that's a, you know, a side project. And actually, I have a letter from Peter Dutton when he was the Defence Minister. We applied to the Parliament to have this reviewed. I went to the Canberra archives and we discovered that Billy Hughes actually signed a, with, you know, it's got a Commonwealth seal, a document from the Prime Minister's office, ordering that the cannons, the Russian cannons, be returned to Crimea. It's very interesting how that will obviously develop. But the reason why I'm talking about this is because Australia is not a colony, for goodness sake. You know, and if that's what it takes, if it takes us becoming a republic, then so it should. You know, at the end of the day, King Charles came in, didn't give a pardon to the boys. You know, I came out of prison. The first thing I said is, we got a new king, give a pardon. Shave 20% off the prison sentences. That's what a new king usually does. King Charles didn't do that. So I wonder what kind of support he can expect. I don't think he can expect much, to be honest. We all love Diana, but I don't know about Charles and Camilla.
Yeah, no, not too much, I wouldn't think. And in 70 years, the monarch hasn't really shaved too many or commuted too many sentences on her birthday or anything else, if I recall. She might have, but I know that happens in Indonesia and Thailand and a few other places. But I don't recall it happening here in Australia. Apparently, you have to be a very good inmate or pay a politician before you can get time off.
When Putin came to power, he released around 800,000 prisoners on amnesty. It was one of the biggest ones in world history.
Wow.
Yeah, it was very serious. And actually, at the moment, the Russians are offering prisoners 6 months of military service, and you can get 10 years off your sentence, which is very impressive. Obviously, you know, the prisoners are happy to do so. And, you know, everybody in Russia served in the military. So all prisoners are all ex-army. Everyone did their conscription, you know, 2 or 3 years. You know, so there's nothing more terrifying for NATO than facing, you know, a division of Siberian prisoners, you know.
Yeah. Well, Hitler found out just how hard it is to invade Russia. But the hard thing about trying to invade Russia is you meet Russians, and they're pretty hard people. They've had to live under conditions that no Australian has ever experienced, unless they've, like yourself, I suppose, travelled back there and put themselves intentionally in it. There aren't too many Australians that can deal with anything like the temperatures that are, in Siberia, for instance. I don't think Mount Kosciuszko gets that cold. Certainly not the ski fields. So it breeds hard people, not just men.
Well, it's the mentality. It's the mentality of the Russians.
Too. Yeah,
and it's the mentality of the Russians. And there's a joke that the Russians say. They say, why are the Ukrainians so good at fighting? They're putting up a good fight. Why? The answer, because they're Russians.
Yeah, exactly.
And the thing is, these Ukrainians, they're all ex-Russians. They're all, a lot of the Ukrainian officers, they studied in the military academies of Moscow and St. Petersburg, and it was all one. And it's just a tragedy. It was all a CIA plan, American plan to turn Russian Orthodox and Ukrainian Orthodox against each other. They did it in 1917, where brothers were killing brothers. They did it in 1991, where again the company collapsed. The country collapsed. The current crisis is a tragedy for the Russian people. And when I see these fake, pro-Ukrainian supporters, these woke sort of latest trend. Before they were saying let's wear a mask, then they were saying let's support the yes vote. Then let's do this, and then all of a sudden they become experts in Ukrainian military tactics. They don't care about Ukraine. They don't care about Russia. They have no interest in it. It's just the latest thing, the latest trend. And you know what? They're forgetting about it already. They're all forgetting about it. A lot of the countries that used to support Ukraine are already stopped. They were willing to support Ukraine just for for the virtue signaling factor, because that was the latest trend, the flavor of the month. And there'll be a new flavor soon, and that'll be climate change, or that'll be whatever's next on the agenda of the globalists. But the Russians, they've completed their objectives. What did they want to do? They wanted to secure those lands. The Russians never said they're going to attack the West. I did a video right in the beginning of the war, the special operation in February, and I said in that video they will not go for the Western regions. So it just like, if I could explain it, it's like Australia taking back Victoria or New South Wales. It's their backyard. If the British took back the Falkland Islands, the Russians sat back and just said, yeah, do whatever you want. I mean, it's your business. It's your backyard. Russia's not going to send missiles to the Falklands. And that's how ridiculous it is that Australia is sending missiles over there. Australia is sending Bushmasters. Australia is sending $400 million. Send money to Lismore. Send money to worthy causes to fix the hospitals, the nurses, the transport system. The train drivers are on strike. So at the end of the day, the Russians are taking this war very seriously. It's a patriotic war. There's a lot of patriotism at the moment. All these fake reports about people running away. You know who ran away? The ones who were cowards anyway. The ones who were pro-American anyway. We don't need them. They're not even good for battle. They're not good for, you don't want them in the trenches. You don't want a guy like that next to you. Out of 145 million people, 250,000 ran away. No worries. Go. They won't be coming back. You will never come back now. You will never be welcome back. But those who have been honorable, those who have been, dignified, they'll always be welcome. And if they don't make it, if they don't live until the end of the war, they'll be cemented into Russian history, into the memory and their memory. And it's a very, Russians are very patriotic. Every year there's military parades in every single city. Unfortunately, in some Western countries, they stopped having military parades. They have other parades of non-military character, which are, very detrimental to children, to society.
Yeah, lots of rainbows involved. Everybody feels good about it.
I mean, look, that happens everywhere. And if people want to do that, it's fine. Let them go and get a hotel or go in the basement or wherever in their bedroom.
Yeah.
But don't put it.
Let us have our military.
They shouldn't make it as the main ideology of the country or the city. You get some trendy mayor in Sydney and they put the flags on the town hall, for goodness sake. They put the flags on the police stations and on the government buildings. Could you imagine in Russia putting a rainbow flag on the Kremlin? Of course you couldn't. It's impossible. Or in China, for example, or in another sort of country where there are, solid military traditions.
Saudi Arabia, Turkey.
Well, look, this country is not lost. I can put it that way. There are a lot of Australians who are awake, and there are more and more Australians waking up. In fact, the longer this goes, the more people actually join the ranks of the unvaccinated, because by people not getting it, there's becoming more and more and more unvaccinated. And at the end of the day, it turns out that those people that went to rallies and that refused to comply, they were right. The government has now removed all their restrictions and all their stupid mandates and everything that we fought against. And thank you to all those people and the people watching, your audience, and people like Ricardo Bosi and people like all of the freedom fighters out there. It's only thanks to the fact that there was pressure. There was real serious pressure that we mobilized politically. We mobilized on the streets. We had massive rallies, and we showed the government what we think. And where are they now? And Brad Hazard, he won't contest the next election. I dare you, if you're listening, Brad Hazard, and probably everything I talk about online gets sent to some committee in Canberra where they try and figure out if I've committed an offence or not while I'm talking. Absolutely. So for those people that are watching, the investigation team of the Aussie Cossack YouTube, because they've admitted they do this, they actually sit in command centres and watch my videos. So listen to this. I'm talking straight to you. Hazard, if you're going to run in the next election, if you'll run, I'll run against you. I don't care where it is. Even have to run in the northern suburbs or in the eastern suburbs or wherever it is, just to take you on. I hate Brad Hazard. I hate David Elliott. And I don't. It's a bad word. It's a bad word to say that, hate. But let me remind you what they did to us. Take it back to August last year. What was David Elliott doing? He ordered the police hand down as many infringements as possible. It was speaking down to the people, calling them buff heads and idiots. Brave mum and dads, construction workers, truck drivers, teachers that went out to stand up for Australian freedoms, and he was talking down to them. As the police minister, he's supposed to be defending them. It's supposed to be the police that actually defend the people. And in this case, the police were used as political attack dogs. Shame on Mick Fuller and shame on the police at that time. And that's why so many police left their ranks. And it's a great credit to those police, for example, from Cops from Truth and Roland Crystal, a lot of police that defected to the people during that period. You can say the Aussie Cossacks are a bit of a, anti-police campaigner, but where credit's due, I give credit. I'm fair. And I can say that there are good police out there because they refuse to enforce those mandates. They refuse to hand out those infringements. Just if this is the thing, people need not forget. As we get to the election, a lot of people forget. People stop going to rallies. People stop campaigning. But it's use it or lose it. You got to use the freedom. You've got to use the freedom.
Got to use it and appreciate it and actually learn what it is, because a lot of us think freedom is just being able to drive down the road and get something from Bunnings or turn up at a bakery and have bread there. They have a very limited understanding of what true freedom is. And I've got to admit, for most people, to be absolutely free is a mind-boggling thought where you could go and do anything you want, whenever you want, wherever you want, and provided you don't hurt anybody, you're not stealing anything, you're not creating any damage with what you're doing, then you're allowed to go off and do it. And that includes driving at, a speed greater than the one posted on the highway. But you have to be careful with things like that because you might think that you're the world's greatest driver, but if you had a blowout and if you happen to clip another car that was going much slower, it, has consequences. So that's where, this freedom mentality needs to be tempered. You've got to think of the consequences of being fully free, but then embrace them and live them. So that doesn't mean traveling at 200 kilometres an hour on a 100 kilometre an hour highway.
Well, that's what Penny Wong's doing. Penny Wong is traveling 200 kilometres an hour at the wheel, on a bus with the rest of us in there, going downhill without any brakes. That's what she's doing, Penny Wong. This is the most important time in our. Someone says in the comments, if I had a penny for every time she's Wong, I would be which. That's very funny. I had to read that one out. I mean, look, Penny Wong, if you're listening, you probably are.
Clever viewers, mate. Clever viewers.
Hey, if Penny Wong's listening, and she probably is, all she's got to do is turn around, do a press conference and say, as an Australian foreign minister, I represent Australian interests first. I'm going to look after my own country. And Australia has no business in a European war. We do not want to get involved. Let them sort out their differences. Australia needs armed neutrality. We need to be arming up. We need to be protecting our borders. We need to be, have a deterrence. Why do you think the French and the Americans tricked us with these submarines? Because they prefer Australia being a colony. They prefer Australia being a little puppy dog to NATO. You know what? I'll tell you. I guarantee you, and this sounds outrageous, but I know it'll happen. If Penny Wong has a piece of humble pie and she's willing to give me a call and say, Simeon, can you help us get some nuclear subs? I'm happy to get some from Russia, and I'll help her, and I'll bring a fleet of Russian submarines, because 2042 or 2052, and $800 billion later, they're not going to get subs, mate. You're not going to get any subs. They don't want Australia to have subs. Once Australia has nuclear subs, that's it. Australia can do its own thing. Australia can tell everyone to get stuffed. We don't have to go to Iraq anymore, Afghanistan. We don't even need bushmasters. If you got subs, no one will mess with us. Look at the countries that get invaded. The only countries that get invaded are the ones without nuclear weapons. No one ever invades the countries where you got nukes.
Your timing is impeccable. Here we are, the 1st of October, and talking about submarines, and I immediately want to see the script for the hunt for the Wattle October. I think that'll work out really well.
Well, all jokes aside, Russia actually supplied Indonesia with submarines. Indonesia has 40 Russian submarines. 40. Australia sends Indonesia money, hundreds of millions of dollars, billions of dollars in aid. But the Indonesians have enough money to arm themselves. Yeah. Yeah, we probably. So the failings of the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade are just outrageous. You know why? Yeah. Because Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, like many other Australian ministries, they're not focused on patriotism or sovereign interest. They're focused on virtue signaling, equality, tolerance. That's all well and good. Do it, but don't let it become the main focus of what you're doing. Teachers should be teaching maths and English. Instead, they're teaching kids how to pick what toilet they should use, girls or the boys. It's ridiculous. It's out of control. In this country, it's actually very unhealthy, and we can see that it's affecting even as security of the country. It's becoming a national security issue. This woke weakness. We've got to be tough.
Simeon, well, it's no secret you've got a whole heap of trolls that follow you. We've got a few of them who have come along tonight. Now, this one is a classic. I've got rid of a couple out of the chats already, but this one's a classic idiot. He actually thinks you're Russian, not Australian. So if people are going to argue against you being allowed to have freedom of speech, being allowed to express what you feel about what's going on in Russia or Ukraine for that matter, what level of intelligence are we dealing with when these people can't even do the smallest amount of research to understand that you were born here in Australia? Your mother came from Victoria, somewhere?
My mother was born in Geelong. I was born in Australia. In fact, my great-grandparents immigrated to Australia, and they were part of the white Russian immigration, the Cossacks, the white Russians who supported the Tsar and that fought the communists. So they fought against the Bolsheviks and they fought against the communist takeover. And as a result, there were millions of Russians that were forced to leave. Many were killed and sent to labor camps, and of course, many settled. And a lot of our family, some of our family stayed over there, and they ended up being sent to the gulags and ended up being moved to Kazakhstan and so forth. So it was a very hard time in history. And look, our all of our family and so forth, Australia and New Zealand and America, all overseas. I studied in America for 1 year. I lived in France for half a year. Then I studied in Moscow for 4 years. Traveled all around the world, and I've been everywhere. But Australia is the greatest country. It's a very great country. It's a lucky country. But the thing is, we've got to fight for it. We've got to make sure it remains a great country. And I do not have any Russian citizenship.
You're only a young man. You've done an awful lot of traveling in your. What are you, 32 or 33?
32, yeah, 32. Yeah. So I don't have Russian citizenship, and unfortunately, I can't travel anywhere because of my parole conditions. I can't even leave New South Wales. So there are some trolls.
I wanted to set up a book tour for you, and you told me that we can't go anywhere except New South Wales.
I will start with New South Wales. See, you've got these trolls, right? And look, I love the trolls. The more they talk about me, the more they repost, news and articles and links. It's hilarious. The Daily Mail, Daily Telegraph, the Australian. What they do, they write these outrageous articles. Putin's #1 man in Oz, or whatever. Russian nationalist or something. People read that and know it's a G up. They know it's ridiculous. They write articles. Aussie Cossack and wife spotted at the beach. It's like a big deal. We just went down to the beach.
There's a shock.
It's a shock. It's like this, Women's Weekly tabloid journalism. But it's very funny. I reposted myself, and I say, guys, read this. And it actually discredits the mainstream media when they act like this, especially when they do these, cheap shots. They attack family and wives and business and, nationality and talk about racism and these sort of, you could say, they never challenge me on politics or the things that I stand for. You know, I'll challenge any mainstream media journalist. I'll challenge any politician. I'll challenge Penny Wong to a debate. You know, come out on live on national TV, put on Channel 9, where you want to put it, and let's have a debate. I'll challenge Albo to a debate. You know, Penny Wong wouldn't know where to start. Too busy, gender, whatever they're talking about. They're not talking about what they're supposed to be. Like Penny Wong should be the minister for, you know, what's she involved in? What does she do? IVF treatment or something? Minister for that, but not the foreign minister.
Sewage treatment, because she'd be really good at that. Minister for moving shit. I think that would be Penny Wong.
Minister for demilitarization of Australia, courtesy of China.
Yeah, she certainly does.
Look, the Chinese are laughing. They're laughing. They're watching Penny Wong send our missiles to Russia and send our Bushmasters, which are all getting destroyed, unfortunately. And the Chinese have put their feet up. Now, they'll give Penny Wong a medal for this.
Yeah, those Bushmasters are very, very good when you're dealing with, you know, Taliban who are using 40-year-old RPGs and, you know, maybe Chinese-made AK-47s with dodgy ammunition. Then a whole different ballgame when you put up against the latest Russian technology, warfighting technology, aren't they?
Absolutely. Look, it's. I've said it before, and Australia, unfortunately, thanks to Penny Wong, thanks to the Labor government, Albanese, we have permanently damaged our defence, you know, export reputation. This is our best product. This was the cream of the crop. This was, you know, Australia's best invention. You know, Australian made, or some people say it was, you know, not even Australian made. We just say it was, but wherever it was made, it was perceived to be an Australian defence product. You know, the New Zealanders bought it. The Denmark, I think, was used in Afghanistan. Sweden bought them. So people thought they were great, but now everyone sees, well, they're not that good. You know.
Yeah. Well, they're good in the right environment, but it has to be.
They're good in Afghanistan, where you got, you know, villages with improvised, you know, weapons. When you're taking on a mobilized nuclear superpower and you're throwing Bushmasters at them, I mean, Australia is not going to change anything. In fact, I'm sure Putin didn't even realize there were Bushmasters on the battlefield. You know, the kind of numbers there, it's staggering. The amounts of, you know, tens and thousands of tanks and things getting destroyed. It's like the Second World War. It's huge. Yeah. We've never seen anything like this. It's very serious. Once again, it's a 1,500 kilometer front. Now, I'm in contact with, you know, friends and relatives and family and good people that are in the battle zone fighting and so forth. And their spirits are very high. Russia intends to go, you know, all the way and win, which is why if Putin is offering this deal, if it's on the table, if he's saying, I'm annexing these 4 regions, there's referendums, we've done the right thing, it's all democratic, everyone voted, here's the results, it's all done and dusted, the West should accept. You know, we're waiting for a Western leader to put his head up and be a man and say, right, let's sit down and talk, Vladimir. You know, the French tried to do it. The French said, we need a solution where the Russians can come out, you know, with dignity. And he straight away got, you know, scolded and shut down by the other Western leaders. So in my opinion, if Trump sat down with Putin, Trump could head the, you know, mediation process. Because Trump understands.
Trump has made the offer.
He made the offer. He did. Trump has put his hand up. And that bloody, you know, lunatic, senile, poor old man, you know, I shouldn't even call him that, you know, because it's sad. You know, you know, hashtag dementia matters. You know, the poor bloke should be sitting around a campfire with a warm blanket and a bowl of soup and telling, you know, kids, you know, old stories and stuff. He's lost the plot completely. So we need someone to stand up and say, right, Russia wants these regions. They've got them. Please stop. Right? Yeah. Or not even please stop. Just stop. The Russians will say, fair enough. All right. We've done our part. You've done your part. And all credit to them. The Ukrainians, they put up a fight. And we say it's because they're Russian. Because they are Russian. You know, except they've been really manipulated. The poor Ukrainians have been manipulated by the West. You know, Biden said he'll fight Russia to the last Ukrainian. Don't forget, the Ukrainian military, you know, they're losing heaps and heaps of men. It's very sad. You know, they're wiping out a whole generation of, you know, Ukrainian Orthodox and Christian predominantly. There are some Catholic as well. It's very sad for us, right? And when I see these people parading around with Ukrainian flags and, you know, virtue signaling, you know it's fake. You know it's rubbish. These TikTokers and Instagrammers and stuff, they got no idea. They don't know where Kramatorsk or where Melitopol or where, you know, Zaporozhye or Kherson is. They're not interested. You know, it's the latest flavor of the month. So again, I just want to use this opportunity, Carl, to address your audience today, because I know many of the people watching have had a very open mind and been very responsible with educating themselves properly on the Russia-Ukrainian conflict. And people like Ricardo Bozzi, who straight away, basically the first day of the conflict, said it. They said what it's all about, and his prediction came true. And those people that trusted Ricardo, well done. Those people that figured it out themselves, well done. Those people that had a gut feeling, or those people that just said, right, the mainstream media, whatever they say, I'm going to believe the opposite. Well, guess what? You're right. You are right. Putin does not pose any danger to Australia whatsoever. Although, in a speech he made on the 30th of September, 30th, yeah, the 30th, this is about yesterday or something, he actually said that the whole Asian Pacific region is at risk of destabilization. And he said this straight after he talked about conducting strikes, very serious strikes. He didn't directly say nuclear strikes, but the rhetoric was very strongly worded. And he said Asia Pacific region just out of the blue. It just came out. It was like it was out of context. It was just like talking about this, talking about that, and then he said it very sorry, he said it very harshly, very firmly. And I posted this video up, and I said, Penny Wong, I hope you're listening. This is what you get when you send missiles against a mobilized nuclear superpower. Russia has mobilized, only once or twice or three times in history. The last mobilization was in 1941 when the Germans attacked. And after the 1941 mobilization, Russia only demobilized in 1991. Yeah, wow. So, the Soviet military had millions of troops in Europe for all those years. East Germany and so forth.
Can you just explain? There is a question somewhere in the chat about the conscription that the Russians are undergoing. Now, this is a partial mobilization, and I've read at least what I assume to be an honest translation of the orders, and that is that they are calling up people in specific areas that have had specific training, and more specifically within the last 5 years. But others who may be a bit older could also be called up, undergo some training, and be sent to fight in whichever part of the country it needs to be. Now, is there an age limit for those people who might be called up? And when it's conscription, are there, like Australians will remember conscription from the Vietnam War, where they're rolling out bloody ping pong balls and calling out names? Or in Russia, do they just knock on your door and say, you're coming with me?
Well, okay, so at the moment, the Russian military has mobilized, and it's only a partial mobilization. It's not fully mobilized. If Russia was to fully mobilize, it has a reserve of about 20 million men.
Yeah.
If they mobilize that, then it's, that's it, it's on. So hopefully that doesn't get to that stage. But the reason why they need to mobilize is because they've captured so far 109,000 square kilometers. I mean, just imagine 109,000 square kilometers. I mean, that's like more than the size of Victoria, It's more than the size of Greece, more than the size of Bulgaria, more than the size of Portugal. So they've captured the equivalent of a whole country. So just in terms of providing, infrastructure support, and I don't want to use the word occupational force, because it's not an occupational force. You could say liberation force. I mean, these regions are very, you could say they're very happy to see Russian troops where Russians are in there. So it's not like, you got to put a soldier in every corner, It's more or less to, enforce peace. And the leader of the Crimean Autonomous Republic, Aksyonov, he actually said that after the regions are incorporated into Russia, the special military operation will turn into, that will finish, and it'll become a counter-terrorist operation. So which basically the Russians are saying, that's the limit of our interest. We've taken these regions. That's all we're interested in. No more special military operation. It's becoming a counter-terrorist operation to clean out any sort of problems or resistance or anything like that, or Ukrainian, you could say, infiltration groups, or take down any missile launch areas that the Americans have put in there, the HIMARS systems and so forth. So they'll secure the area. So the West should really read between the lines here and say, well, Putin he's trying to finish the war. He's not trying to escalate it. And you got these absolute morons who come to the ABC. And there's one specialist they always quote, I don't know his name, he's like a former general of the Australian Army. But every time he gets on, it's like this pro-war rhetoric. He's trying to push the country into war and create hysteria. I can't stress this enough. Australia hasn't got a dog in this fight. We shouldn't be there. The mobilization that's occurring, there are too many troops that have mobilized. There are too many volunteers. The voenkomats, which are the recruitment centers, they're overflowing. I mean, you've got these, you've even got these Russian regions where republics live, because Russia obviously used to be an empire, and we still really are an empire. You've got Chechnya, Dagestan, Buryatia, you've got Tuvinцы, you've got Tatar, you've got all these different nationalities who are all joining up. A lot of Russian Muslims are joining up. The whole, these are, from Siberia, we've got all these nationalities, and these are people who are, these aren't city dwellers, mate. These are people who live in the country and work on, these are real men. So in terms of mobilization, there's no shortage of soldiers. It makes perfect sense that there's a mobilization because you need a force to obviously, occupy the new territories. These frontline troops need to be rotated. Of course, Russia took heavy losses. There's no doubting that. And Vladimir Putin had a minute of silence in the Kremlin yesterday in front of all of the sort of Russian leadership. He's acknowledging that. And we know that. We all know that. But I'll tell you the reason why. And I've said this from the beginning. The reason why Russian troops were dying is because they were fighting an honorable war. They could have done the American tactic. They could have carpet bombed every city, flattened it with missiles, cruise missiles and HIMARS systems and the B-52s and whatever, and then just come in with their Humvees and mopped up and take photos for CNN, just like the Americans do in Iraq and everywhere else they go. But the Russians were trying to preserve infrastructure, preserve civilian life. Don't forget these strategic infrastructure, this strategic infrastructure which the Russians were capturing. For example, the Zaporozhye nuclear plant. These were places that were built by the Russians. That plant, we built it, and we're back to we're taking it back. So, these Azov Steelworks, the Azov Steelworks, where there was fierce battles going on there, raging. Also built by the Russians, built by the Soviets. So there was no goal. There wasn't in the mission objectives to destroy Ukrainian life or destroy infrastructure. It really was not a war, as Napoleon or Hitler would have, or the Americans like to do. They come in, they kill everybody. So basically, in answer to your question, and I know it's been a long answer, but the military operation is going to plan. The spirits are very high. Patriotism is very high. There's a renaissance over in Russia of patriotism. If anything, this has made Putin very strong. There's a lot of talk about now just creating an empire and saying, we'll stuff the democracy system. It's not suited to Russia. Let's just be an empire. And Putin is acting like an emperor, acting like a strong leader. And a lot of Russians wanted that. They wanted to see that. There's a lot of nostalgia for the old days. There's nostalgia for the Soviet Union. There's nostalgia for the Russian Empire. But again, let me reassure all the listeners: there were no plans ever historically of conflict with Australia, and there are no plans now. So whatever the Russians are doing, whatever they might be doing, the main thing is Australia ain't got a dog in this fight. And there's the answer to the question.
It'd cost them more to fly here and bomb us than it'd be worth getting out of us at the end of it. So don't think about that too much. It's not going to be an issue. All right, mate. Look, we've been going nearly an hour and a half, and I can tell that your throat does require a vodka refresh. Don't want you coughing up a lung on your third week out from jail. So briefly, give us a bit of an idea. When can we expect the book to be coming out? You did mention to me that there might be something of a party coming up on the 7th of October, just quietly between you, me and the Gatepost. I need to know if that's going to be the case, because I will come down for it. I'd love any opportunity to come and have a sausage with the Aussie Cossack beside the harbour. And, of course, if we can catch up at all on any of the shows that I'm going to be doing coming up in New South Wales, then would love to have you on board if you're free and able to come.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, the book will be released soon. We'll have an opportunity for people to, order the book and so forth. But it'll be a very controversial book. It'll be quite an interesting book. Not only will it, have a sort of diary of what, what it was like in jail as a national security interest inmate. But there'll be a lot of my political views in there as well. And someone in the comments said, "Is it going to be called Mein Kampf?" No, it's not going to be called Mein Kampf. But that's a very funny joke. And now, what I wanted to say in closing, thank you again, Carl. Guys, who's listening, Carl played a very, very crucial role during my imprisonment. I couldn't contact him, and without being asked to do so, without being sort of, begged or instructed, Carl just jumped into sort of, help out your mate mode, as all Australians understand and do. And he did the right thing, and that's very honourable of him. A lot of people came through. And they helped me when I was in jail. They helped my wife, and a lot of people are listening. You sent letters, you sent postcards. I just want to say thank you to every single person who actually sat down and, wrote a handwritten letter. I did read every single one, and I've got them all. And we will do a video about it. And thank you for everyone who supported the legal team. We had a very big battle on our hands. The New South Wales Police, the prosecutor, they threw all their resources at us. Thank you again, and as well to all the people who came and protested at the jails, at the courthouses, everywhere. I remember going past in a prison truck, and I couldn't see because of the tinted windows, but I could hear outside. I could hear people screaming, protesters screaming, "You've kidnapped the Aussie Cossack! Where are you taking him? Release him!" And that was a big morale booster. So thank you very much again.
I'm glad,
Carl, and we'll hope to be in touch. I'll talk to you about the 7th of October. It's going to be a very lucrative day. Guess what? It's somebody's birthday on the 7th of October. So we'll let the conspiracy theories figure out whose birthday it is.
Absolutely. I won't go telling if you don't.
That's a hint. That's a clue.
Don't give him hints.
Wouldn't that be outrageous? Imagine the Daily Mail article. Russian nationalists celebrate Vladimir Putin's birthday.
Well, mate, the way you're going, I wouldn't be at all surprised if Vladimir Putin's media spokesperson wishes him a happy birthday from you on the 7th. You seem to be getting some astonishing coverage over there at the moment too. They were very supportive, the Russian government, while you were in jail. There was a number of very supportive videos. In fact, one of them must have been nearly 10 minutes long, where the Russian government made it very clear that the Australian government was not necessarily acting very well.
Well, guys, let me say this. The Russian government supported the Aussie Cossack when he was in jail by applying political pressure. And, I'm not a Russian citizen, but they still did it anyway, because I'm considered to be a compatriot, which is a Russian who's not a citizen. And that's a very good thing, right? Now, the Australian government has an obligation to also support its citizens. Julian Assange has been imprisoned for so many years now. Yep. And he is an Australian citizen. It's not up to America. It's not up to Britain. It's not up to Israel or Russia or Germany or China or any other country to go in and bat for him. It would be strange. It's strange that the Russians came into bat for me, because I knew the Australians wouldn't, the Australian government. So my message to you again is let's all refocus our efforts on Assange, and let's look at around the 16th or 17th of November. I'll get in contact with Ricardo's team, and we'll speak to Dave and so forth, and yourself. Let's have a massive rally in Sydney, and let's bring attention to the plight of Assange. Because until Assange is free, it's shame on all of us. Shame on every single one of us. This is a national tragedy. It's actually it's a shame on Albanese, of course, because he's got the power to do something. All Albanese needs to do is pick up the phone, ring senile Joe Biden and say, listen, release him. That's all he's got to do. Assange is in prison for truth. Yep. All he did was reveal what the Americans were up to, what the CIA was up to. He doesn't deserve to be in jail. He deserves a Nobel Peace Prize, for goodness sake. Yep, so Edward Snowden, in fact, the American defector, who published whatever material against the Americans, he was actually given Russian citizenship a few days ago. So if the Australian government does not want to defend Assange, I challenge Albanese to come out and say so. Be a man, either defend him or don't defend him. Because if you don't defend Assange, we'll organise for him to be naturalised as a Russian citizen. And we'll get Putin to defend him. Because say what you want about the Russians, but at least they defend their own.
Absolutely. I'm right behind that idea, mate. And I actually I've got a contact who is, well, if you like, a bit of an aficionado on Julian Assange and has some contacts there. So I could get her involved, Wiki Chick, and I'm sure she would love to get behind something like that. So, yeah, let's talk. Let's see what we can put together.
Look, the comment section is going crazy. People out there do support Assange.
Oh, yeah.
It's a national disgrace that the government has not stepped in. We step in for, whatever, Chappelle Corby or something like that, something, I'm not saying she's bad, but something very frivolous or, borderline, right?
Yeah.
Step in for Assange. That's what we need to do. And look, we can do it as the freedom movement. We need to keep the traction going, keep the pressure on, and we can be really unified all together, rallying behind this cause. So I think it's a very good idea also in terms of the longevity of the freedom movement.
Yeah, and what better idea than to get the voice of the people together with the voice of freedom?
Right. At the end of the day, if we do manage to free Assange, it's going to be a win to the people, and it'll be a shame to Albanese. But Albanese, he'll probably change his tune once he realizes there's enough public support. He'll change his tune. Look what he's done with the indigenous people. 30 years he's been in politics, didn't do anything for him. All of a sudden, he's about to get elected and says, I will commit to the Uluru Statement and all that. And he puts the Aboriginal flag behind him and the Torres Strait Islander flag. That's what you call, again, it's fakeness, virtue signaling. When I was in jail, all the indigenous boys, the boys there, they can't stand Albanese. They see the news going every day. They talk about supporting Aboriginals. But, there's 35% of the prison are Aboriginal, where they only make up 2% of the population outside of jail. So if Albanese actually cared, he would do something about it. Anyway, it's been a pleasure. I've got to take an urgent phone call from the Kremlin. Thank you for having me on, Carl. I appreciate it. It's been a great chat.
Thanks for coming on, Simeon. I really enjoyed it too. We run an hour and a half, which is probably a bit longer than we originally planned. Thanks for stepping up today after last night's interruption. No problems, of course. When the lawyer calls, man, we fully understand you've got to run.
Lawyer or wife, whatever the excuse was, you know how it is. It's all over the place. I've only been free for a few, 14 days now. So I'm still getting used to being in freedom. But by the way, we're not actually free. We think we're free, but we're not, are we?
No, we're not. You are free, though, quickly to lose some weight. Now, you lost, 17, 18 kilos while you were inside.
I lost 18 kilos, probably put on now 6 or something.
Oh,
Mrs Cossack is...
You rang me the other day. You were walking around the harbour. You were, strutting it out. I could hear it. So you're still doing a bit of exercise. I saw a video with you down in the gym of the country club. So you're obviously making a concerted effort to lose some weight.
Well, I'll see what I can do. I'll keep trying. Thank you for the encouragement and support. All right, Carl, it's been a pleasure. Thanks to all your supporters again, all your viewers as well.
Cheers, mate. No worries. You have a good night.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. Appreciate it. The Aussie Cossack, bit of a legend, and what an interesting night. Certainly some interesting questions there, and some interesting answers. So thank you to everybody who put in their questions. I didn't get to them all. I do apologise. A little bit of housekeeping, I suppose, to wind things up. Cherie at vofhq.com is the right-hand man / woman of the Voice of Freedom. If you want us to come and do a show, we're real keen to come. Now, she's very excited. We've had some contact from folks in Tasmania. We've had some folks in Victoria. I spoke to Darren Bergworth last night, right after the live last night. I rang him back. It was his birthday. He was very in a very celebratory mood, but was telling me that he's got a few places lined up in Victoria to go and have a chat with about the People's Council, which was why I actually wanted to talk to him, because a lot of people in Victoria have contacted us here to say, can we come down, do a show, maybe do Magna Carta 1215 lessons. We're happy to come and do all that. So I've linked Cherie and Darren Bergworth together, and we are coming to Victoria, and we are going to come to Tasmania. That will all happen towards the end of this month, October, and into November. We'll need to rejig a few things going north into far north Queensland, but timing is, all the issue here at the moment. We're aiming to try and do a few things in Melbourne with Darren Bergworth and his My Place, which is something I'll tell you more about as we get a little closer. While we go on the road, I do want to try and get my place up and running, and we're going to call it My Place at Your Place. So be prepared, folks. Saturday nights are going to get a little bit of variety added to it. Let's put it that way. At least that's the plan. So look forward to having you as part of all that in the coming weeks and months. I'll just have a quick scan here of any quick questions. Yes, I do need to get admins or moderators into the chat. I will sort that out. And when I say I will, Cherie will, because she's very good at all of that. At sorting things. I'm sort of not that flash. I will get a couple of people across all these channels. I understand it's very annoying for many people. I don't engage with them. That's probably the easiest thing. It's the easiest thing for everybody. I think if you just don't engage and troll, they feel, well, useless. They can only feed off you if you give them something back. So yeah, don't worry about too much about that. Yes, we do expect. Thank you to everybody who has been giving me hints about ways that we might be being infiltrated. We do appreciate it. Keep the hints and tips coming. Always keen to hear new and interesting ways they try and do it. But yes, we have very good eyes on that sort of thing. And you never know, we might just be letting a couple of them in for a reason. So, yeah, all may not be as it seems in that regard. Get the popcorn ready. Next week, things are going to heat up. That's what we've been hearing. I did see somebody mention silver, how much of it to buy. As much of it as you can. It's pretty cheap, $29. Somebody was telling me the price of it today. I showed some stuff last night that was about $40. So, yes, plenty of places you can buy it. ABC Bullion, I believe, in Sydney, Ainsley Bullion in Brisbane and Melbourne, the Perth Mint. There are a few other places. So shop around. The prices do change quite dramatically. So the buy price particularly. So shop around is my advice that. If you're keen to get behind this free Julian Assange, and who wouldn't be, let's be serious, then that's something we might work on by way of a convoy from Queensland to Sydney, because I'll be driving down. So convoys seem to be a bit of a thing at the moment. There is the big one heading to Melbourne, which I believe, if I'm right, picks up along the Sunshine Coast tomorrow, I want to say. No, maybe not tomorrow. Might be Monday, I want to say that's happening. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then arriving, I believe, Thursday on the outskirts of Melbourne for a big Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, a bunch of events. Can't tell you what those events are. All I've been able to find out is that there is a planned drive in over the Balti Bridge around the city and back out again. It seems a long way to drive down to do a lap of the city over the Balti Bridge, but there might be other things going on. I'm sure there will be. So there are sites available for that if you want to go and check out theirs. And we will, if we decide we're going to get involved with this whole Julian Assange thing, if the Cossack wants to set up a rally, and, well, I don't think we'll invite Mac, then certainly I'd be involved. Very happy to see Julian released. And if there's a bunch of people who want to travel from Queensland and follow the old Hyundai down, then please do. Love to have you. Could be a hell of a trip. We could have a lot of fun, get our own little CB channel happen, convoy style. All right. I think I've probably bullshitted enough for one Saturday night. You have spent far too much of it. Go and enjoy your family, folks. I do appreciate you. Thank you so much for watching. And if you would like to, please like and subscribe, particularly the Nun 2K YouTube channel. We're trying desperately, only because I'm a bit anal about it. It'd be nice to see 10,000 subscribers on it. I don't know. I don't think it means anything to anybody. I just think it's a nice number when you're sitting at 9,500 and something we have been. So if you haven't liked and subscribed the Nun 2K YouTube channel for me, please do. Please do. go to our website too, vofhq.com. I'm slowly getting a handle on how to upload stuff in there, and I'll get it uploaded in the right order in the right places soon. Cherie is doing a masterful job of moderating and looking after comments. And if you have any questions, you've got any requests to get us to come to your town to do a show, happy to do it. Love to do it. Send Cherie an email, tell her where you are, and she'll give you a list of things that we sort of need to have in place to come. And if you sort those out, we'll be there. That simple. So send your email to Cherie, that's SHEREE at VOFHQ.com, and she will get back to you with details on that. We are having it's a work in progress at the moment, but it looks like I might be back on the road next week, back down through New South Wales, heading to Victoria. And I see Black Sheep's in the room. I don't know if you've just got here. I've only just seen your name turn up. So Black Sheep, happy man. Oh, yes. Well, of course, apparently Black Sheep has been talking with Cherie. So thank you, mate. Thank you for your support. We're looking forward to coming to Tasmania. And I'm told they have lobster down there. Just saying. I've only heard stories. Just saying. Yeah, okay. I won't say any more on that. Thank you again, folks, for spending time with us on your Saturday night. I really appreciate it. It's I consider it a great honour that you would deem to spend time with me. And I know the Aussie Cossack's a big part of that. So I'm sure he's very aware and grateful for your support too. Thank you very much. Go to the website, check it out. If you feel the urge to donate, to give us $1 or $2 to keep us on the road, that'll be great. I've got to go and get the car serviced before we go anywhere. God knows how much that's going to cost. But anyway, we'll figure that out and see you on the road somewhere soon. If I do see you on the road, do me a favour. Don't be one of those dickheads, all right? They're no fun. Don't be a dickhead on the road.
You let one ant stand up to us, then they all might stand up. Those puny little ants outnumber us 100 to 1. And if they ever figure that out, there goes our way of life. It's not about food. It's about keeping those ants in line. That's why we're going back. Does anybody else want to stay? Let's rock!